The Raiders lose in Indianapolis to the Colts and are officially eliminated from playoff contention. That plus a whole lot more comes up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, Monday, January 1st, 2024.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, you're checking us out on YouTube. Thanks so much. Definitely appreciate that. And appreciate my man Ari, who does a great job on YouTube, or making sure we're on YouTube each and every day. He does a fantastic job. Matter of fact, you can hit him up on Twitter at Ari Producers. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. We'll get to your calls and texts coming up in segment number 3 of today's show, following the Raiders' 23-20 loss to the Indianapolis Colts, dropping them to 7-9 overall and out of playoff contention. In segment number 2, going to talk about what the Raiders need moving forward. Obviously, they still have one more game to go, but we know that the season's over as soon as Week 18's game versus Denver is over. So what do the Raiders need moving forward? We'll talk about that coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, kind of go over the game, what it looked like, what it should have looked like, how it went wrong, where it went wrong for the Silver and Black, all that good stuff here in segment number 1 of today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we do that, though, I do want to let you know today's show is being brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Before we get into the game, welcome to 2024. Hopefully everyone had a fun, safe New Year's. Obviously, it wasn't a very good New Year's Eve with the Raiders losing to the Indianapolis Colts in a game that I believe they should have won, a game that I picked them to win, a game that I picked, well, the next two. I said they were going to win the Colts and they were going to beat the Broncos. And, well, now obviously it doesn't matter. Still believe that they beat the Broncos on Sunday at Allegiant Stadium, or whenever it's announced. It's Sunday or Saturday, one of the two, at Allegiant Stadium. So I'm assuming that they're going to get that W just because I think they're the better team, just like I think they were the better team than the Colts. They just didn't win the game, and really a lot of it had to do with self-inflicted wounds. That's kind of the theme and the feeling I took away watching that game as I sat on the couch and just watched it and just said, the Raiders aren't taking advantage of the opportunities they have, and then they're shooting themselves in the foot when they feel like that they're starting to get a little bit of momentum. They had the false starts, multiple false starts. Jermaine Illuminor had a couple. Jakob Johnson had one. And those little 5-yard penalties, even though they seem like they're only 5-yard penalties, for this team in particular, those are killers. And multiple times they killed drives, not being able to overcome the false start penalties. Or, and it's funny, I say that, the penalties were a big thing. They only had 7 for like 50-something yards in penalty yards, but the timing of the penalties were not good, right? Of course, at the end of the game, the Jack Jones pass interference penalty that I thought was very suspect, and also Jack Jones being offsides, trying to block the field goal, thought that was a suspect one as well. It's still not 100% convinced he was even offsides, but there's that. But it was just, again, it was the timing of the penalties that they happened, or even bad decisions as far as play calling, right? And I put that in the category of self-inflicted wounds as well. I didn't think Bo Hardegree had a very good day at all calling plays. I think that when you have Aiden O'Connell throw the ball 40-something times, that's a problem. That's exactly what they did. 40-plus passes for O'Connell is too much, especially when Zamir White was cooking with grease. He was running. He was getting downhill. He was looking good. And for some reason, they would go away from it. How many 3rd and 1s were there? All of a sudden, they tried to take a deep shot. I don't mind being aggressive. I really don't. I understand you're trying to score touchdowns. I get it. I understand you're trying to keep the defense off balance and guessing. But when Zamir White was running downhill pretty solidly, consistently, I don't understand why early on in the game when it was 2nd and 1, 3rd and 1, they wouldn't just pick up the first down. More 3rd and 1 than even 2nd and 1. But 3rd and 1, they just wouldn't do it. It was some deep shot they would take, or they would try to do some trick play. And it just seemed like it didn't have to be that complicated. So, I mean, when I say self-inflicted wounds was the story of this game, it wasn't just penalties. It wasn't just play calling from the coaches. It was also the defense giving up big plays where they haven't done that very much this year, right? Multiple 50-yard pass plays early in the game. That really set the Raiders back, set up the Colts. One was a touchdown, and one set them up for a touchdown. Like the Raiders defense hadn't been doing that. They had been getting a lot of pressure on the quarterbacks, and they had been creating turnovers. They didn't have any takeaways on Sunday. The Colts didn't have any takeaways either. They almost had a takeaway. Max Crosby punched out a ball on Jonathan Taylor, which would have been a nice fumble recovery, especially because it was so close to it was in the red zone, and so the Colts ended up getting a field goal off of that. If the Raiders could have recovered that fumble, that would have been awesome, right? I mean, we could be talking about a different game right now. But again, it just seemed like they just weren't quite there on Sunday. It felt like that they were believing a little bit more of the hype. That's kind of the feel I got when I started watching the game. It just kind of felt like all the praise that we have been giving the Raiders and AP and the defense in particular. And when I say we, I mean we, like as in me, right? Talking about and hyping up how good the defense has been playing and Coach AP, what he's been able to do and how these guys are ready to run through walls for him. It almost felt like they thought they were going to show up in Indianapolis and get the W. Now, I don't want that taken out of context. I'm not saying that they didn't go out there with the effort. It just seemed like that they felt like it was going to come a little easier than what it did. And obviously they fought hard in the game, and they were down. They were in the game, till the very end, till they weren't. So I don't want to say that it was a lack of effort, because it wasn't. The effort was definitely there. It was just the execution wasn't there. And like I said, a lot of self-inflicted wounds. And again, a game that I know the results of it. You look at the scoreboard, 23-20 Indianapolis. It could have easily been 23-20 Raiders. It could have been 27-20 Raiders. I mean, they had multiple opportunities. I felt like they really could have gone down, scored, especially early on when the defense gave up the first drive was a touchdown. Then the Raiders went back, scored a field goal. Then all of a sudden the Raiders got off the field like 3 times in a row defensively, and the offense couldn't take advantage of it. It's just, like I said, there was so many opportunities that I felt like were missed. And, just, again, bad timing on calls, bad timing on some of the play calls that they had. I mean, it was just a weird felt kind of almost like you were in a Bermuda Triangle type game, right? It felt like that there was never ever a good sense of, okay, they got this game, or they're gonna snap into it, right? It's just and I guess snap into it is probably the wrong description, because then again it makes it sound like the effort wasn't there. It just felt like an odd game. It just felt like it was kind of weird, and a lot of it was because of the Raiders. Antonio Pierce after the game said the Raiders beat the Raiders, and they did. That was the best way to sum it up. Like, the Raiders beat the Raiders on Sunday, and that's not me trying to discredit the Colts, but I don't think that they were the better team. Now, they did do a good job running the ball with Jonathan Taylor. That was one of the big keys. The Raiders were going to have to stop the run. They didn't do a very good job with that, but I mean, if you look at the yardage, the Raiders had more yards. They had the ball, time of possession. They had 2 more penalties than the Colts. I mean, but the yardage was pretty much the same. I mean, in every statistical category, the Raiders had the better number, except for the one that matters, which is the score. So they end up losing 23-20. So now they're out. There's no playoff hope for the Silver and Black, and that's unfortunate. I thought it was going to be a Week 18, game at Allegiant for all the marbles possibly and all the excitement. I think we all thought about it in our head, how fun and exciting that would be, and it just isn't going to come to fruition. So following next week's game with Denver, they'll wrap it up. They'll go into their coaching search. They'll decide what they're going to do with that, and they'll have another offseason, a hell of an offseason, where you'll see a lot of change when it comes to the Silver and Black. But officially, the Raiders are out after losing 23-20 to the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday at Lucas Oil Stadium. Coming up in segment number 2, what I believe this team needs moving forward. Talking about the offseason, talking about some of the moves I think that the Raiders will make in the offseason. I know there's a lot of reaction and maybe even overreaction after the Raiders lost on Sunday to the Colts. Well, I'm going to let you know exactly where I stand with the coaching staff, the quarterback, and more. We'll do that in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. And we'll get to that right after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. The easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports is just you against the numbers. That's it. You're not battling thousands of players, no pros, no sharks. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in just like that. With basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, which is a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues, like LeBron James and Travis Kelce, on a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made plus receptions. Whatever the case may be, it doesn't have to be those players. It could be any players. Plus, PrizePicks offers a reboot policy so your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and doesn't come back in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with the injury insurance policy. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use promo code LockedOnNFL for our first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Promo code is LockedOnNFL for our first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to jump into what I believe the Raiders need. And I've been very adamant about the fact that I believe that Antonio Pierce should be the head coach moving forward. I know a lot of people changed their mind on that after the Raiders lost on Sunday. I saw a lot of people tweet at me after I tweeted out, the self-inflicted wounds is the best way to summarize the Raiders' loss to Indianapolis. And a lot of people said, yeah, that's on the head coach for not having them prepared or having them suffer those self-inflicted wounds. And so a lot of people all of a sudden that were on the AP train have jumped off the AP train. I am not going to be that guy. I'm sticking with Antonio Pierce as the head coach. I think that we've seen a lot of good from him in the time since he's taken over on November 1st as the head coach of the Silver and Black. Would it have been nice to finish off the season like I thought they were going to on a 4-game winning streak? Sure, that would have been fantastic. It just didn't happen. The other team has something to say about that at times as well, right? So the Colts win the game. I'm not off the AP train. I still think he's the best guy for the job, but there's going to be growing pains. There's going to be times where his game time management is not always going to be the best, and he's going to have to figure that out on the fly, and you only get that with experience. But you just have to have experience. You've got to get that time on task. So there's going to be times when we probably scratch our head if he does get the job and say, oh, man, he should have called a timeout there or he should have called a timeout here. And it's easy for us to say sitting on the couch or sitting in the stadium watching as opposed to being there, having to make that split-second decision. I just think that what he's been able to do, what he's been able to show in a short amount of time is, one, he's not the guy that feels like he knows everything. He's willing to learn. He's willing to learn from others that have been there and done that. He's already a guy that can motivate the team to go out there and play with their hair on fire. So that's not even going to be a question. And as long as you put the right people around him, as far as the OC and others, you should have a really good opportunity to go and win a lot of games. The DC is already in place as long as they can hold on to Patrick Graham, and I believe that they will. I think it's going to be a little challenging. I think there's going to be some other teams that try to talk to him. But with that being said, I think that they should have the fast track, the lane to keeping him around, right, as the defensive coordinator. Obviously, there's still a few pieces that need to be addressed on the defensive side of the ball to continue to build that defense. It's never going to be, 100% perfect. But more importantly, you got to figure out what you're going to do on offense, right? And the offensive coordinator. And I know Bo Hardegree is just like Antonio Pierce. He's learning on the fly. But I don't think you could have two in the same position. So if you're going to have, a rookie head coach, a guy who's never done it, except for the games that he's been coaching as the interim head coach in Antonio Pierce, if you're going to have him as the head coach, you've got to have experience at the offensive coordinator. Now, if you don't keep AP, then maybe you don't need to have experience at the offensive coordinator, right? Then you could change up. But that's going to obviously come down to who Mark Davis wants to go with as the head coach once they go through all the interview process, which, again, they're going to do. But if AP can reach out and find some of his, colleagues, some people that he knows, and he's got plenty of connections around the National Football League, and those guys that can get it done as far as the offensive coordinator and be very creative and have experience, right? That it's got to be someone experienced at that OC position if you're going to roll with AP. Again, I just want to make sure I specify that. I'm not trying to eliminate Bo Hardegree and kick him out the club and say, well, you don't have experience, so you can't do it. And then say, well, Q, you just said you'll learn the experience, right? I think that if you keep one, you've got to have the experience at the other position. So I'm keeping AP, and I'm looking for a sharp-minded offensive coordinator. I've had people suggest to me about Eric Bieniemy. I've had people suggest to me Adam Gase. Obviously, Adam Gase has already been around the team, same as Marvin Lewis and same as Tom Coughlin. Those guys have already been there, done that. So Those names have been floated out there, but those are just names that have been floated out there. It doesn't mean that those are guys that it's going to come down to, right? I'm sure that Antonio Pierce already has a good idea of what he wants to do if he, in fact, does get the head coaching position. I think he already knows the people that he probably wants to bring in and add to the staff, and I do believe that Marvin Lewis will be part of the staff in some capacity. I believe that Tom Coughlin would probably be involved in something in some capacity, with the organization in some kind of capacity, and Adam Gase might be involved. Right, those are guys that have already been around the team that he's already brought in and kind of put them, put their brains to work as far as just getting a little bit of feedback from what he's been doing, a little evaluation what he's doing with the team. And then the quarterback. I think the quarterback definitely needs to be upgraded. I think Aiden O'Connell is a good quarterback, but I think the Raiders need a really good quarterback. I think they need, like I mentioned last week, I think they need game changer. Not a game manager, and that's not a disrespect. The game manager is not a disrespect, but a game changer, someone who is just a dynamic quarterback, a guy that could be mobile, a guy that has a strong arm, a guy that could just make off-schedule plays. I mean, just a lot more than what we're seeing with the Raiders. And I feel like that the Raiders have had, with Derek Carr, they had 9 years of a really good quarterback, right? After he broke his ankle, he wasn't very mobile. We know that he started to run a little bit towards the end, but that still wasn't what he wanted to do. Aiden O'Connell, same thing. He doesn't want to do that either. He may run for a couple yards here and there, but that's about it. I think that that's got to be a big-time priority. I've heard people say Justin Fields, you could trade for him. I'm not a big fan of that. I've mentioned it before why. I don't like the fact that you got to make a decision on the fifth-year option with him. And then, if he has a really good year and you picked up the fifth-year option, then all of a sudden you're on the hook for a contract that's going to be a big one, $40+ million, right? So is Justin Fields, has he earned that yet? And I see the connections with Champ Kelly, so I know that's why a lot of people are talking about the potential of Justin Fields once he gets out of Chicago, and I'm sure he will get out of Chicago. Now they have the number 1 overall pick by way of Carolina, so I'm sure they'll pick a quarterback, and then Justin Fields will be on his way out. So that could be an option. I'm not saying it's not. It's just not my preference. I prefer for the Raiders to go into the draft and get their guy and have him under control for 4 or 5 years at least, and then know what they have in him. That's my preference, but that's just me. Right? There's also the Russell Wilson option. People have talked about that. The Broncos are going to pay the majority of his salary next year. He's already going to get, $39 million. So whoever he signs with, it's not going to have to be for a lot of money. So they could sign him, realistically for a very low amount of money, and he could, be the starting quarterback for now. He could sit there and mentor Aiden O'Connell. Maybe he could mentor a rookie. I mean, there's different options. I think the one big deal, the Raiders need to keep basically all quarterback options on the table, because they need more than what they're getting right now. And they still need to upgrade the offensive line. They really do. I know the offensive line has done some good things. I like what Thayer Munford's been able to do at the left tackle position. Jermaine Illuminor, I like him a lot as a person. I think that he provides some quality blocking at times. He still gets in his own head and starts making mistakes, like he had the multiple false starts on Sunday. He's been good, but he's not fantastic, right? I think that the Raiders just need to upgrade. They need to really have a great offensive line. There was a time when the Raiders had a great offensive line, right? I mean, when we all called it car insurance, they had all that car insurance up front. They need to get back to that, having a dominant offensive line, especially if, and I tie it all back to Antonio Pierce, if they end up giving him the head coaching job, he's going to want to run the ball. That's the style of ball he wants to play. He's not a guy that's going to want to throw the ball around the yard 45 times. You've got to be able to be nasty up front. You've got to have to be able to block up front. And this offensive line does a decent job of blocking up front. I think they actually do a good job when it comes to run blocking, but you've got to be able to do both, pass block and run block. So if you're going to go with AP, man, build up those trenches, make them big, nasty, strong. Get that run game going, whether it's Zamir White, Josh Jacobs, whoever the case may be, and get yourself a dynamic quarterback. You've got a defense already in place, probably just needs a few tweaks here and there, and you're good to go. Offensive coordinator, though, has got to be upgraded. And again, this is all the AP idea. They could always go out and do something else, though. Mark Davis could go, there's rumors about the Bill Belichick route. If he gets fired, that he'd be intrigued by Belichick. Of course, Jim Harbaugh's name is out there. I just think if you're going to go with somebody, you got to go with somebody that's going to be a strong, kind of gritty type person, right? Someone that's got that a little bit of edge to him. I think that's what this Raiders team needs, So again, I'm team AP still, even though the game on Sunday wasn't a great resume builder or whatever. I guess that's what I've been calling them, resume builders. But I still think that AP is the guy for the job. That's just me. But they definitely need an upgrade at the quarterback position and definitely need an upgrade at the offensive coordinator position and additions to that offensive line as far as I'm concerned. Coming up in segment number 3, what's on your mind? Your calls and text throughout that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. This is the Locked On Raiders podcast. We'll get to your calls and texts after I tell you about FanDuel. And the weather's getting colder and colder and colder and colder, but the NFL offers stay red hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins, just like that. So you've been thinking about joining FanDuel? You should. Do it right now. There's no better time to get in on the action. The app is easy to use. It's a wide range of betting options from spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Plus, with the playoffs, it's a lot of fun to bet, make your wagers on the playoffs during the football season. It is fantastic. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get into the NFL season the right way with FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and text straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with Army Raider. He's calling to talk about the game and the game management of interim head coach Antonio Pierce in the Raiders' loss to Indianapolis.
What's up, Q? It's your boy, Army Raider. So a couple observations today. Now, start this off by saying I think Antonio Pierce has done enough that, yeah, he deserves to get a shot. But in a sense, I also think that may not be good for the long term. I mean, the players love him, yes, but this isn't just him in general, but it's kind of showed today. It reared its ugly head. I don't think in the modern NFL you can really rely on a defensive coach to win at a high level. You know, if you look at all the teams that are up top, they're offensive coaches. And I mean, John Harbaugh's the weird one in that he's a special teams coordinator, but he went out and addressed his offense to change his team around. The issue with defensive coaches is the ultra-conservative nature that they go into the game. How many times today did we punt from inside the opponent's territory or kick field goals when there was absolutely pointless to kick a field goal? I count at least 5 or 6, right, between punts and field goals. And that's just how defensive coaches are. They're conservative. They just want to wait and play, get the defense out there, ride the defense. Now, in his defense, he has a quarterback that really can't throw. And an offensive coordinator that I don't want anywhere near the team next year. He's a quarterback coach because, if we're being honest, our quarterbacks haven't exactly developed either. The second thing I'll notice, and it's, you know, not to pile on the kid, but when the ball comes out of Aiden OConnell's hands, it just looks like it's in slow motion. And I counted 4 balls today to where he just absolutely didn't have the arm strength to make the throw necessary. And that's not something that's changing at this point in his career. It's just not. You know, that's something that you can maybe address in high school going into college, but once you get to the NFL, you're not going to get that much stronger of an arm. Anyways, I'd love to hear your take on defensive coaches. Like I said, Pierce has done enough to deserve the job. The players love him, but I don't know how that works long term. And if he is going to be the long-term option, he really needs to grow a set and start, playing so ultra-conservative and start going for it a little bit, But anyways, Army Raider. Oh.
Army Raider, thanks for the call. As always, again, thank you for your service. I appreciate you. And look, I still believe he could be the guy. I know the conversation around defensive-minded head coaches. I get it. And I love how you brought up John Harbaugh, the special teams guy, and he's kind of, the outlier. But what did he do? In your words, he went out and addressed the offense. That's what I was talking about in segment number 2. That's what AP, if he gets the job, needs to do. Go out and address the offense. Similar to what John Harbaugh did. Go out there and get a strong, sharp, offensive-minded dude. Right? And that's the thing about it. I believe that this coach could be the guy. I believe he could be a really good coach. He's going to have times where he's going to make some bad decisions, right? But I think he's going to learn from that. But as long as he's got some strong coaches around him and some others around him, like a Marvin Lewis, like a Tom Coughlin, like a Adam Gase, like the guys that he brought in, not necessarily saying those 3, but just guys in general like that, I think he could be fine. I think that he's playing super conservative right now because he knows his offense isn't very good. Right? So he's leaning on what's the best part of the team, which is, That's the defense. The defense is the strength, and the special teams. And the one thing, there was a lot of punts on the wrong side of the ball, the field. Like, I get it. There's times where I wanted him to go for it on fourth down, but it was end up being, 4th and 1, then all of a sudden 4th and 6, right? Because of a false start penalty or a delay of game penalty. And a couple of the delay of game penalties they had were just because of delay of game, right? I think there was one that was obviously that they weren't going to do. I thought they should have gone for it a couple times on fourth down, but the punting of A.J. Cole, the way that he was able to pin the Colts back, I thought that was fantastic. And the Raiders defense has been so strong that I would count on them to get off the field pretty quickly. And a couple times they were able to. Now, the Colts did go down one drive and go the whole length of the field and get into the end zone. So, that backfired. But for the most part, pinning a team deep and trusting your defense has been the strength of your team. That's not really a bad thing. So I just think that, again, you've got to have a sharp, strong, offensive, creative mind around as the offensive coordinator. But I definitely think AP can get the job. But, again, that's just me, right? Obviously, there'll be a lot of conversation. We'll hear a lot of rumors about different people interested in the job and different people that Mark Davis is potentially talking to about the job. So thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Raider760. Morning, Q. I have a question I want your thoughts on. With Russ expected to be cut, we assume based off the decision to be benched, would you entertain the idea of signing him in the offseason and still draft a quarterback to sit behind him? If not Russell, would you bring in Justin Fields for a one-year deal and still draft a quarterback, be the better deal? Let me know your thoughts. Have a great the rest of the year, and we'll hear from you in the new year. That's Raider760 texted in on Saturday. And thanks for that text. I do appreciate you. And it's funny, talked about that in segment number 2, right? I think Russell Wilson is probably an option, maybe on a one-year deal. Justin Fields, like I said, I'm not a big fan only because you've got to make a decision on the fifth-year option, and you don't have to pick up the fifth-year option. You could decline it, similar to what they did with Josh Jacobs, but then all of a sudden he goes out there and has a big year. Now he's a free agent. Now what do you do? Do you franchise him? Do you give him a big bag? What do you do, right? And so I don't like to have to make that decision. And I think he's been in the league long enough to kind of have a good idea if he's going to be a really good quarterback or he's a really good athlete. Now, I've talked about mobility. He's got all the mobility in the world. Hell, he could run for 1,000 yards. He has. And that's not ideally what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for a guy that's going to run for 1,000 yards. I'm not looking for Lamar Jackson, right? Now, if Lamar Jackson was available, that'd be a different subject. Oh, wait, he was available at one time. No, but really, I'm not really high on Justin Fields. I don't know how good he could be as a quarterback. And I realize that, he has moments and flashes where he looks like a really good quarterback, but then he has moments where it's like, what was that? It's the consistency. It's that C word again, something that we talk about with Aiden OConnell. He's just inconsistent as a quarterback. Russell Wilson could be a guy, one-year deal. You still go draft a guy. That would be fine. I'd have no problem with that. I just know that the quarterback room needs to be cleaned out. Aiden O'Connell could stay, but everyone else, Jimmy G needs to go. They need to take the cap hit on that. That's fine. There'll be dead money, whatever. It is what it is. Obviously, Brian Hoyer needs to go as well. Leave Aiden O'Connell and revamp that offensive or that quarterback room. There's no doubt. So thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Up next, call from ABA Ivan Davis. He's calling to talk about the job Aiden O'Connell did on Sunday versus the Colts. Here he is, ABA Ivan Davis.
What's up, Q? This is ABA Ivan Davis. I just want to go on record as saying that this was a hell of a job by Aiden O'Connell. I put this game on the offensive play calls. We had multiple opportunities to score points, and the wrong play was called. And then you expect a rookie quarterback to execute a bad play. They did not consistently put him in a position to succeed. That last drive was impressive. You're not going to simulate that in practice. You can't make that up. You can't do mental reps. None of that. With the game, with everything on the line, you need a touchdown. And the defense knows it against a defense, Gus Bradley's defense, that's generally stingy because they sit back. That's what they're waiting for. They just sit back and they take away what you're trying to do. And he throws a perfect dime. Perfect to Devontae Adams. Put it only place where Devontae could catch it. This man's a gamer. I'm not saying he's the quarterback, but the man got a heart the size of a lion. He reminds me a lot of Derek Carr, except Derek is more mobile than he is, but he reminds me so much of Derek Carr. Okay, when he came to the Raiders. Okay, as far as this, do not quit, do not give up. I can bring you back. I can win this game. And so I still say we need to go get a quarterback, but he's definitely a keeper. Okay, so I just want to go on record as saying that I was a little upset. 23-20, we should have won this game. And Jack Jones, you get GOAT of the week. I mean, jumped offside. If we'd have missed that he missed that kick, we go down, score that touchdown, it's tie game, overtime, who knows what happened. Basically, we gave away a chance to win this game. We gave the Colts this football game. Oh well, on the flip side, we played Derek Carr and the Saints next year in New Orleans. I took a peek at next year's schedule. Talk to you later. Go Raiders.
Thank you for the call, my man. And I mean, Aiden wasn't bad. He missed a few easy throws, a couple layups. You got to have those. But he didn't turn the ball over. You know, he was asked to throw the ball way too much. I'm with you. I thought that the run game was actually pretty successful, and I couldn't believe all the times that they kept going away from it. I was like, wait, hold on. Why are you making him throw the ball so many times? Like, I understand you're trying to get some guys involved, but it seemed like sometimes they would try to stretch the field and threw a couple deep ones, or threw at least one deep one to Trey Tucker, wasn't close. Threw one to Devontae where he took a big shot from DeForest Buckner that I felt like it really wasn't close there either. I don't know. It was a lot to ask of him. You're right. The play calling in general just seemed odd. Like I said, man, the game to me, it kind of felt like it was almost like a fog type game. And like I said, it wasn't from lack of effort. It just felt like I don't know, like the play calling was kind of, like I said, in the Bermuda Triangle, right? Just kind of in that weird zone, right? The Raiders didn't get to the quarterback as much as they normally do. You know, they didn't create any turnovers. You know, they didn't get gashed except for a couple big plays. But, you know, it's just, like I said, it just never really felt like a really good rhythm game on either side of the ball for the Raiders on Sunday. It just, like I said, it was kind of odd. So thanks so much for the call, my man. I do appreciate you. Again, an upgrade at the offensive coordinator position, I believe, would be a game changer. So thanks again. I appreciate the call. Finally, we'll close out with a text from Raider 187 in the 315. It says, Q, Raider 187 in the 315. I know there's another game left and the playoffs were a long shot, but this game stung. Penalties, bonehead mistakes, and horrible play calls. I'm having a hard time looking for positives moving forward. The uncertainty with the coaching position, the upcoming draft, and not being able to capitalize on solid players. Hire a new head coach and shatter the current locker room. New OC and the new system takes years. We're in a constant tumbling state. When will this change? We all agreed that McDaniels had to go, but now we're left with the uncertainty looking to the future. Seems like every year we have the same excuses. New system, takes time, only the second year in the system, blah, blah, blah. Something has to give. Appreciate the show every day and the level-head approach you have, Q. Keep slaying it. That's from Texas, or that's a text from Raider 187 in the 315. Thanks so much for the text. And, yeah, that's the thing, man. That's the thing. The head coach, if you don't bring back Pierce, then all of a sudden you have a handful of players that feel some kind of way. And you can't worry about that, right? I mean, it's a business. They know that. I know that certain guys will have something to say about it in the locker room. You know, they'll have some kind of voice to Mark Davis and give their suggestion. It won't be the end-all, be-all reason, but, you know, that's why MD has got to make that tough decision, right? And whoever he's got in his, his group of people that he's talking with. But, you know, you bring in a new head coach, then they're going to bring in their people. Then they're going to do their system. Then it's almost like a complete rebuild. You know, I know, like I said, a lot of people talk about Jim Harbaugh and bringing him in. And, you know, I feel like, and this is just my personal opinion, he's about a 4-year fix, and he's going to want a lot of power, right? And I know that people are telling me, oh, he's been at Michigan longer than 4 years. I get it. But typically, Jim Harbaugh starts wearing on their players, on the organization after a certain amount of time. And again, going back to all the money he's going to want, similar to the Gruden contract, that's what he wanted before. When they were searching for the next head coach, they ultimately ended up with Josh McDaniels. He wanted the same thing that Gruden had, the same contract, and he wanted to be. That's how he was going to accept the job as the Raiders head coach. You know, there's always something going on with him. I don't know. Like I said, he's a very successful head coach. You know, I don't think anybody in Raider Nation would be upset if Jim Harbaugh was the guy. I just feel like the Raiders have already been down that road of the power struggle, have the guy be the end-all, be-all, the coach be the GM as well. I just don't think that that's a good recipe for success. But, again, Mark Davis wants to win. That's what I do know. He wants his team to be back to being a team that's in the playoffs each and every year, a really good team like they were back in the day, something we haven't seen in a very long time. He wants that again. Everything that's been going on with AP has been a fun feel, a fun ride. But yeah, this offseason, and I feel like I said it last offseason. No, not last offseason. The season before, or the offseason before Josh McDaniels got hired. It's going to be a huge offseason, right? They got a lot of tough decisions to make, and here we go. You know, two off seasons later, here you go. It's rinse and repeat, like you said. Another big offseason, another group of tough decisions that they have to make. Who stays on the roster? Who doesn't stay on the roster? What do you do with Josh Jacobs? He's literally a free agent after, next week's game, right? His 1 year contract will be over, and I doubt he plays the next week's game. Because why? Why would he at this point, right? I mean, he hasn't played the last couple of games. Zamir White's been in there getting his burn, because of the quad injury to Josh Jacobs, and now the Raiders are totally out of it. I could definitely see him not playing, right? I'm sure Colton Miller, if Thayer Munford's okay to go, he left the game on Sunday with a knee injury. If he's okay to go, I'm sure Colton Miller will shut it down, right? They're going to have to make personnel decisions. They're going to have to make coaching decisions. They're going to have to make front office decisions. They're going to have to make decisions. There's a lot of decisions that this franchise needs to make this offseason. And, now that they're officially eliminated, it's all going to start rolling right about now. So buckle up, Raider Nation. Please believe there's never a dull moment when you're talking about the silver and black, right? And there won't be here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. So, again, hopefully everyone had a great New Year's Eve, a great New Year's celebration. You came into 2024 feeling good, even though the Raiders lost the game. Still, it's going to be a fun year. Should be a fun year. We'll be here each and every day on the Locked On Raiders podcast doing what we do. So, until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.